This episode is brought to you in partnership with our friends at Airbnb. Your home might be worth more than you think. Find out how much by going to airbnb.co.uk/host.
New jumper, new little green.
Got this yesterday
Hey,
after the meeting
nice.
because it was a beautiful sunny day.
You just had a lovely little jolly.
Well, I
Take
no,
pictures,
I just
go shopping.
No, I went home, but I was like, I'm going to go via a long way. It was a beautiful sunny day yesterday.
Stunning.
and
Not so much today.
I thought, great, some street photography. Now's the time.
Yeah.
And we were in Old Street, and I came out, and it was right at lunchtime, and I thought, got to go to Bagel Bake.
Those
Get
shadows
myself a
can be
bagel.
clearly defined.
Well, the thing is, I've done Brick Lane so many times in my photography, so I ended up getting sucked back in out of habit. But I realised I was like, photography-wise, I'm done. I wanted to go to the city and like the glass and the concrete, the shadows, and all the city workers.
It's Liverpool Street. It's very sort of,
Totally.
It's very weird because you've got that whole area where you've got the old Roman walls, but it's been completely like over dominated by like swarms of corporate offices.
Yeah. It's very interesting
one,
but
yeah.
and all the sort of POMO buildings, postmodern that is. That's what the movement's called.
Sure, yeah.
But I ended up going with my stomach, which was like, I'm hungry. I want to go to Bagel Bake because I live in Putney. Like, I'm not in Shoreditch often, so I was like, I've got to go to Bagel Bake, and obviously it's fantastic as normal.
Great, really good.
And then I was like, there's there is color and shadows and graffiti. I'll take pictures of that. And then I was like, I also do love a vintage shop, and there's like 1,000 down Brick Lane. And before I knew it, I was being sucked down, and I was like, well, I might as well just go home from Aldgate East. But I got this. Yeah, I saw this,
nice.
and I got
Nice
this little number, and I thought I'll put it.
It's just a vintage. You don't know if it's a brand to mention.
It's got a Greek logo on it. It's written in Cyrillic on the back.
Nice.
So I don't know what brand, what era, but the thing is about vintage shop, the best vintage shops have to be. It's not just about the stock. Obviously, you want good stock, and you want it to be good stock, well priced, well organized. That's the key. There's nothing worse than going to a vintage shop that is overstuffed and it smells like your granddad's basement.
Yeah.
You want it to be well organized and categorized, and hopefully enough space. Usually with a massive thumping retro soundtrack. There's a good L Train Vintage in New York where I got a shirt. Very well organized, very clean, which is great. That's what you want. You want kind of like store quality. Approach to a charity shop.
Our lovely stylist Catherine was running a vintage shop, Pickup Vintage,
Yes.
at one point. I could follow Catherine Pickup for all your styling needs. She ran a successful vintage operation, but has since let it go to pursue styling.
Starting full time
Yeah.
with new clothes.
There's in the sort of big Camden redevelopment that's gone on, there are loads of little pop-up shops and like bubble tea, and there's a bagel shop around there that's just completely posing. I had one there. I was like, this feels like a supermarket bagel that you got some cheap cream cheese on, that you barely toasted. Yeah, I was like, please.
I will just say with vintage that you have to be discerning. Like this I got for I think for a fairly good price with no stains or anything. But sometimes you see something like this shirt second hand. 45 quid, but it has a stain on it and a hole in it that
Like a coffee splodge, like
whatever.
right there.
It's got a Ralph Lauren brand on it.
Hey, yeah.
I know.
That
So anyway,
we had fun last week.
We always have fun.
We always have fun.
But we did have
if you
special
don't
fun last
follow
week.
our Instagrams or our actual Instagram at Pulp Kitchen Podcast, we got invited to the Beeb.
We did.
To do a little cheeky shoot for something.
That's
a little
the BBC
potential
to our
something.
international
BBC. Went to
listeners.
the Portland Place studios, the one that sort of tucked into, hidden away, but massive on the inside.
Yeah, like a TARDIS, real TARDIS.
And I also used to work in TV, but I'd never gone into the Beeb to the studios there. I'd worked on shows on the BBC that were made by third-party studios. But yes, very, very cool to see that. Much bigger than I thought it would be.
I'd been to Television Centre when they used to make stuff there, which is now just like a massive housing redevelopment.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, inside, fantastic.
Very
I mean, we walked in, Hayley Atwell was in the lobby.
Yeah,
straight
she
away.
sat down there, she was, and some cool trainers.
Scanned through the security doors, and Lauren Laverne, who I listen to on Six Music every day, literally walks past me, having just finished her show. I was like, I was just listening to you. That was very good. And got to see the BBC News
Got a
studios.
nice little tour of the whole thing. We went like 5 floors down where the main BBC News studio is. It's absolutely huge. Even for a studio, it looks bigger than it looks on telly. And they were very cool with just letting us sit in the chair, run around. They were like, can we go and let them on? They were like, yeah, we're back live in 3 minutes, but by all means go and hang out on the set. Like, if I was the floor manager of that set, I would have never just let 2 nobodies dick around when it's back live in 160 seconds. I just wouldn't have done that.
And in my head, I had the BBC News countdown. Like, as soon as you've got 3 minutes, I was like, dum,
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, we must hurry.
Very cool. But big takeaway is that there are no manned cameras in that studio. It is they are like floating Daleks on rails built into the floor that slide, and the cameras within them can come up and down, and they go forward and backward, and it is all automated. Which 20 years ago there would have been 20 people in the room.
But it's now. It was just 2 people. Well, 3. It was the weather person, the news presenter, and the floor manager. That was it.
That is it.
There was more of us guests than there were of actual people in the room.
It was just like an empty room, very quiet, with an auto cue, them just doing their thing. Lots of little walls of flashing lights and Ethernet cables and beep, beep, beep.
Yeah.
Very strange to see that.
It was really great being there. And thanks to Alice Bandakravi, BBC London presenter, who showed us around. Who was also...
Fan of the show.
Fan of the show. We should give you a big hello to her. And thank you for being a loyal listener. What I really appreciated...
Proper telly person, you know?
A legit broadcaster.
Yeah.
And what I really appreciated with Alice is that we discovered that she's a fan of a 70s film that I love, that my family called The Goodbye Girl, Richard Dreyfuss movie. And it was, not only have I never met anyone who likes that movie, it's underseen. I've never met anyone who's seen that movie, but not only has she seen it, but her family had an appreciation for it in the same way as my family. So we were like monologuing the little bits. I was like, yeah, and then the joke.
In a very cramped BBC News.
Yeah, it lived. I was like, oh yeah, the bit with the Richard Dreyfuss. Yeah. So that was great fun. So hello to Alice. Also, what we noticed in meeting an actual siren, very loyal siren in the flesh, was that the topics that come up immediately aren't always about film. It's do you put your chocolate in the fridge? Yeah. Do you have your burger with chips? Yeah. Do you like sparkling water?
She really let me down there with saying that burger without chips.
Yes, that was a really exciting week. Also, not to keep talking about it, but James and I continue to be recognised on the streets. We walk among you. Hey, we are but humble people.
What if God was one of us?
I had a very exciting experience on Saturday where, first of all, I was at the National Portrait Gallery, and a guy called Jim, I don't know if you're listening, Jim, spotted me and said, hey, love the show, thank you very much. And then I go into town, do some shopping, and I'm in the middle of Oxford Circus, and I'm leaving a shop, and
you're begging to get recognised. You're like, I was just in the centre of Oxford Circus
with a megaphone hailer, being like, Bob Kitchen.
Just brought like an easel with our logo on it. Just anyone?
And this girl just runs up behind me and grabs me and is like, George, I'm so sorry, I had to. I was like, oh, it's okay, And she was like shaking. She was like, oh my God, I had to stop you. She was very sweet. Her name was Yana, and Yana wanted to say hello. Not only is she a fan of the show. Hello to Yana if you're listening. She is the girlfriend of Cameron,
super spy.
Cameron who works for the super shady organisation who we can't be discussed, but listens to us, surreptitiously.
He's the one that when a guy in a suit behind him says, oh my God, it's Jason Bourne. He's the one that has to zoom in and enhance the photo.
He's the one that takes his headphones off, looks to the director and says, we just lost contact.
Yeah. We lost him. So, and then the guy goes, God damn it.
If it was a Harkonnen, he'd be just dispatched.
Oh, yeah, he'd be gone. Cameron would be gone.
Cameron, please, I hope you're okay. But
we don't know if Cameron's okay. I mean,
we don't know.
Is it Lana?
Yana.
Yana has sort of revealed.
And I think Cameron and Yana also saw you one time. Do you remember, on the escalator?
On the escalator.
Yeah.
That was the day of the Newport
Beach Film Festival in early 2023. How could we forget the Newport Beach Film Festival?
So they're 2 for 2 spotting us.
2 for 2. Well done.
Yeah, Cameron. Still don't know what you do. Yeah. I hope he's listening at work and he's like, shit.
They're on to me.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you enhancing?
I think do you think he's going to be working like one of those old 90s booths, and he's going to get an envelope delivered to his desk? He's going to open it, it's going to be a phone. He's going to answer it, and it's you.
James Kitchen.
Yeah. There are going to be 3 men coming into the office right now looking for you. What? No way.
They're the Reservoir hot dogs.
Yeah.
Run.
Fourth cubicle. Go. That's the Matrix we're referencing there, if anyone didn't get that.
You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
No, you don't stay in Wonderland. You leave Wonderland. Surely you
stay in Wonderland.
No, isn't it the blue pill? You stay in Wonderland and you wake up tomorrow and everything's fine. But you take the red pill, you go down the rabbit hole, and I show you.
That's it.
You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
I'll show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. But doesn't the rabbit hole lead to Wonderland?
Yes, but also, isn't he in a fictional world? So he's in Wonderland. It's been a while.
It's true. Ooh, somebody get that scene.
Can someone get T.S. Eliot on the phone? Is it T.S. Eliot?
And his two, the hands, the pills in each hand, and the 2 glasses.
Lewis Carroll.
Glasses.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Lewis Carroll. Someone get Lewis Carroll on the phone.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Also, sorry, why is the process to unplug so
Complicated.
complicated and tricky?
I think
Surely I would think it's a software execution.
I think it's like when you have a donor, you make sure you don't reject the process. So they need to like prep
brain.
your mind. It's not just about your brain. It's about prepping your minds to not reject the awakening that you have. So when he is finally unbirthed at the...
Because he has that moment when he to turn a human being into this, and he's like, no, I don't believe it. And then he cuts back to the real world, and he's like, he can't breathe. He's like, breathe, Neil. He's gonna pop. And then he like sicks the little splurge all over the grated floor.
Yeah, he's gonna pop.
He's gonna pop.
I choose the Matrix.
Yeah.
Good movie. If you haven't,
Great
when he talks
scene
about
with
it.
Cypher when he's eating that steak.
Yeah.
It's such a good film.
I had a teacher at school once that was like, you do realise you should always take the blue pill.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
Ignorance is bliss. Same. I had a teacher say ignorance is bliss. You don't want to know. You don't want to live forever.
Because I took a teaching job and now look at me.
Yeah. The teacher knows what's really going on at the school. If you guys knew half the shit that I know about this place, you wouldn't know.
Oh, big teacher. Anyway, welcome to episode 129 of
Nueve.
Pulp Kitchen. If you are, it just came to me earlier, if you are a listener who is younger and going through exams at the moment, in the study period across the
I'm
world,
sorry.
good luck to you. You're doing fine. Keep going. It will pass. And when it passes, you'll celebrate and you'll move on. We all go through it and it will pass. So
I'm
keep
so
going.
glad I don't have to take exams
taken
every night. Don't get me wrong, I have more like grown-up responsibilities, which completely suck.
But I'm not locked in a
exams
room
were
for 3
terrible.
hours to
They
do.
would the anxiety, and they just gaslight you. With GCSEs, they gaslight you, I think, for 5 years, making you stressed about how if you don't pass these exams, your entire life will be ruined.
Yeah, you just need to do okay.
It's okay. Just do proud by
what
yourself.
you can. That's it. Just do what you can.
And then you look at your schedule, and I've got 21 exams in the space of 5 weeks.
Back to the episode. Welcome to episode 129. I hope you are all doing well. Last week we reviewed Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Fallout, and La Chimera. Please go check that out if you wanted to, if you haven't done already. This week, guess what, guys? Another editorial episode. How exciting.
You guys love them.
So we've delivered another one for you. We're talking about the best movies of the 2010s. That's 2010 to 2019.
A familiar decade to us. An era that I would say you and I grew up in, were teenagers in, matured our film tastes in.
It's a really important bracket. We went from the age of 16 to the age of 26. Formative years where you are deepening and sharpening your film taste. And
it also very much sets the groundwork for the decade of film we're currently living in. The failures and successes, the proof of concepts are now sort of leading into what we have now in the 2020s.
I will say that as a decade to do a sort of best of roundup, it is probably the hardest because
Really
it is
hard.
the most recent and because for the reasons we just said, and also our audience, it's very fresh in our audience minds. And so when we asked this question on Instagram, we said, give us your ideas for what are your favorite movies from the last decade. So many suggestions. We're like, yes, of course.
A lot of great films come out in 10 years.
I'm saying thousands, like thousands.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of good ones. We won't be able to talk about them all today, but we're going to do sort of an overview, some of the most common threads and suggestions, and we're going to be talking about some of our personal favorites and maybe some of the ones that are a bit underseen.
Yeah, because you can go on any of these listicles and see like the main ones. We just want to throw out some ones that aren't quite there.
Yeah.
And our intention with this is, as when we get time, we're doing the 2010s now, we'd love to do the noughties, and we'd love to do the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, and basically as far back as we dare go to talk about, even like if we were to go all the way back and talk about the
Dawn
Dawn of Cinema, our first films, not that we've seen all of these. I think it would be fun to go and watch them.
for it, we'll do it.
If there's an appetite, we could do like 1930s, 1920s. I think it'd be really interesting to do. And it would be a bit of a sort of study task for us.
It would be like going back to uni, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So that's what we got coming up today. We've also got some emails as normal. And James, what have we got for games today?
We've got more of the sound game. You guys are loving it.
Game.
I'm loving making it. I'm loving playing it. I'm loving editing it. I actually weirdly sometimes forget which one it is when I'm editing. And I'm like, God, what is that again? And then I learn.
I would like to partially apologise for my selection last week. It was the first time I'd done it, and I really leaned into sound as an abstract concept idea. And when I will do the game again, I will include lines of dialogue.
I will say in this one, there are more screams. It always ends up being really chaotic. But yeah, it's sort of, I think I've got a mixture of score, dialogue, sound effect, combination of all three. Great.
Let's get on with the show.
Let's do it. Hey guys, this is a quick message brought to you in partnership with our friends at Airbnb.
James, the warmer months,
it's
they're
brighter.
coming. It's spring,
lighter.
it's summer.
It's great.
Feel it.
Our show literally looks better because the light in the sun is out.
can see it in our skin.
Yeah, or happier.
We are happier.
We probably review things more favourably.
If you, on a graph, we review it more favourably in the
Release
summer
your
months.
stuff when the clocks go back, because we'll be better.
Clocks go forward.
Thank you.
But we, as much as we do enjoy this show, James and I do need a break from each other. We are planning holidays away, geographically away from each
far
other.
too much of you.
Necessary. I want to be in a different time zone to James.
Yeah.
But I love booking holidays. You
Yeah,
know,
it's
it's
great.
nice, exciting.
Got a nice little trip with the family to Corfu.
Oh.
This summer, very nice. We've actually booked an Airbnb to stay out in
Lovely.
Corfu, and my sister is already very organised as she is. She is hosting her London flat while we're away. She's very
Smart.
good. She's very good.
Okay.
Puts that up very easy. Makes a little bit of extra cash while she's away, and yeah, it's just really convenient.
That must be a pretty nice feeling to be on the beach with a pina colada, knowing that you're getting a little bit of extra cash from hosting your home back home.
Drinks on her.
Lovely.
Yeah. And then I actually looked at what other flats in my area were going for. And I thought, I should definitely look into this. I just think it really makes sense, especially if you're traveling a lot for work, you go on the occasional holiday. It's a really easy step to make a little bit of extra cash that really just makes sense if you haven't done it already.
Yeah, I have heard about hosting before on Airbnb. I've never done it, but all the people that have told me about it are people like me. So I often think, why don't I do it? Well, if you guys are interested in hosting, your home might be worth more than you think. Find out how much by going to airbnb.co.uk/host. Okay, guys, the best movies of the 2010s. What a time to be alive. So we put this out on Instagram, as I mentioned. Loads of responses. Thank you, everyone, for their responses. And it's always great to see, we're talking hundreds of responses, a sort of broad consensus and some wild cards as well. And also some people who just forget what the brackets of a decade entail. And
you did specify.
I did really specify. Some people suggesting movies that came out like 2 years ago and movies that came out 15 years ago. And I'm like, no, it's specifically 2010 to 2019.
Thank you, though.
Well, loads of great responses. We'll try and cover as many of them as possible. But without a doubt, the overall... Would you like to guess the number one film that I think stood out amongst our listeners?
I'm going to guess The Social Network.
No, in there, absolutely. I think it's all very tight.
Whiplash?
No, also in there, but not... I think the number one movie that people suggested was Interstellar.
Ah, yeah, Interstellar.
And that brings us on to like our first point, which is this really was Nolan's decade. And
When you look at his output...
4 films, Inception in 2010... Dark Knight Rises in 2012, Interstellar 2014, and Dunkirk 2017. I would say 3 of those are up there with his best. I like Dark Knight Rises, but come on.
Yeah.
In different genres. And this is also the decade when Nolan carves himself out to be his own style of filmmaking. The trilogy, Dark Knight trilogy ends in 2012, and he's able to move into doing his own
off
films.
of The Dark Knight, still regarded as one of the great crime films and comic book films of all time, makes Inception.
Yes. And we
complicated,
forget how,
knotty. Inception is actually sort of this far on from it. It's sort of a little bit sort of not acknowledged as much because Interstellar, I think, has actually weirdly been a bit of a slow burn. It was very loved when it came out, but it's had this second appreciation, I think, in the last like 4 or 5 years where people have really rediscovered how good it is.
I think that's because Inception is great, but Inception is great, but Interstellar, as we've mentioned before, it emotionally connects with people. I think that's up there, with the exception of maybe Dunkirk, is the most emotionally profound of Nolan's films, which is because Nolan for some of his films can be very cold.
Dunkirk,
and I think that is why it sticks out. Yeah, Dunkirk's like bleak and profoundly.
But
like,
the moment when
sad.
Tom Hardy's gliding the plane through,
it's emotional.
The
Very
boy's
emotional.
checking the newspaper.
Talked about it last year, guys, on a bonus.
That really gets you, especially if you're all British.
And they're playing was it Elgar over the end?
Yeah.
I think with the Inception though, because it seems such a long time ago, but we forget how much of a talking point that was for it to be a film that was intelligent and well designed, but could also have mass appeal and make a load of money. It was
incredible cast.
It was like
Hardy.
A real injection into the arm of cinema.
It was one of those you were trying to understand it with people, and you saw it the second time. You're like, yes, I totally get it now. And you see those visual diagrams that people did of like the 5 layers that it went through. Just brilliant.
I love that, and we love Interstellar. We acknowledge that it gets a little bit flawed towards the end.
BFI is celebrating its 25th anniversary soon, and they are re-releasing a bunch of 70mm IMAX prints at the BFI IMAX. And of course, one of the prints they have in stock at the BFI is Interstellar. They're doing all of Nolan's films. I think they're doing Dark Knight trilogy. Oh no, Dark Knights 2 and 3.
Are they doing both 2 and 3? Okay.
Because they've got IMAX things for them. It'll be Interstellar, Dunkirk, Tenet,
and Inception. Dunkirk, phenomenal Nolan film, but yeah, it's very much his decade. Also, at this point, I should mention that there are several great films that came out in the decade that we're not going to mention or we're not going to talk about in depth because we've already talked about them recently.
2 weeks ago.
So, Whiplash, Get Out, great movies.
Ex Machina.
We
just discussed them recently, so like we acknowledge them. But yeah.
Same with Before Midnight. I love it, but we did a whole episode about it. So
I'd also think when looking at the 2010 to 2019, it would be impossible to not tip your hat to the MCU. Even though I don't think as individual films, apart from maybe the Endgame and Infinity War, would you acknowledge as the best films of that decade. But this is the decade where they completely dominated fandom, blockbuster takings. Regardless of where it's at in the 2020s, it's in a very different position. But you cannot look at the 2010s and not go, holy shit, look what Marvel did. Look at the most amazing experiment that they actually managed to pull off with those last 2 Avengers films that really, really worked.
Yes, the superhero genre dominated that decade.
For better or worse.
And I think I have a lot of respect for, I like Infinity War and Endgame, both of them, but I do have a lot of respect for Endgame because yes, it's, delivered by the biggest entertainment conglomerate on the planet, but it is incredibly hard to land what is the most expensive TV series ever made. The series finale, the 23rd film in the series, a 3-hour epic that works.
There are very few broad consensus criticisms of those films.
No,
you don't find people be like, well, obviously that thing. People in general have really fond memories of them, and you just look at that and go, that's bloody impressive for a huge conglomerate to pull that off. Yeah.
But what happened is with Marvel kind of breaking through and making superheroes the dominant genre, you also did get some of the best superhero films outside of that. Logan, Spider-Verse, really good,
Guardians
interesting.
Guardians,
MCU, I mean, it's MCU, but there are moments. Obviously, you also have the Justice Leagues and the Suicide Squad, which is the lesser side.
Very, very solid.
But I really feel like Logan and Spider-Verse. If you're going to look at the most dominant genre, those are the most interesting expressions of that. We also had a great decade for sci-fi. Arrival. Blade Runner 2049.
I saw a clip of Arrival online the other day, and I just forgot.
It is clipped a lot, isn't it?
It's brilliant. It's really,
really
and
good.
it's sad. It was On the Nature of Daylight by Max Richter score at the moment when everything becomes clear. And I just was like, it's such a good film.
I actually think Inception helped revive science fiction a little bit, even though I wouldn't describe it as a science fiction film. It's that's emphasizing you can merge cerebral back into blockbusters. Similarly, Looper, Edge of Tomorrow,
Blade Runner 2049.
I said that, but even Under the Skin, the Jonathan Glazer movie, from the art house to the mainstream, you have really interesting science fiction work there. That's at its best. I also think for me it was the best and worst of Tarantino in the sense that I really don't like The Hateful Eight, but I really love Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yeah, and I think it's just
Glorious Bastards. That
2009.
Just that.
That's the next episode.
Next week.
There are lots of films that people have given a lot of time to. Also, Bridesmaids. That came up a lot. I'm really happy to see people hang on to that as a really solid comedy that stood the test of time. Probably the best comedy of the decade.
I think solid is underselling it there. I think it's excellent. Yeah.
It's really excellent. It came out in 2011 to, I think, a slightly initially sniffy reception from the very sort of male heavy critics. And then actually it's brilliant. You also have in the years since when the talent from that film has just grown and grown, you're of course, if you put a movie together with Kristen Wiig, Maya Rudolph, and Melissa McCarthy, comedy, it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that's almost also important to acknowledge we didn't get many female-led all-out comedies that weren't in the category of chick flick. That really was big Bridesmaids, all the women at the front of the cast, and it was hilarious. I rewatched it 2 months ago with my family.
It's really good.
And even though I knew all of the punchlines coming, I was still howling with laughter. It's really, really good.
I have quite a nice memory of I'd seen Bridesmaids and I'd liked it. Then I went to America about a year later and it was on the TV. Me and my brother in one room, and obviously my parents were in the other. And we flicked it on, and me and my brother were like, "Oh yeah, we've seen Bridesmaids. This is quite good." Anyway, and then my parents called about something else, and they were in tears, laughing. They were like, "Have you seen this film that's on the TV? Oh, it's so funny. Do you know what it is?" I was like, "Yeah, it's Bridesmaids." So excellent.
And also, it's hard to get comedies being acknowledged in these type of conversations, whether it's Academy Awards or just these best of lists.
I think given we will run through a lot of the heavy hitters that people have suggested, but I think James and I are quite keen to sort of give a shout out to the films that either don't get as much praise or kind of underrated, overlooked, and ones that we felt like we connected to that came out in that era. So James, do you want to go for that?
I'm going to give a call out to Shutter Island,
right.
a Scorsese film that I think is very under-discussed in Scorsese's filmography, which is strange because it stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Mark Ruffalo, who's good in everything, Max von Sydow. It is, it's a really dense, knotty guilty, very sort of uneasy and uncomfortable watch. But I think like especially that last hour is really, really hard to watch, difficult and brilliant. And I've seen it 2 or 3 times now, and every time I go back to it, I forget certain details, and I think this is actually really underappreciated in some ways, or under-discussed.
I think I need to give it a rewatch because I think I saw it when I was 16, and I was very like sort of sniffy about the fact that I could see the ending within 5 minutes into the film. I was like, oh, I see, I know exactly where this is going.
There's that, but I don't. So there's that moment, but I don't think people know the other moment, which is the final line. So everyone saw that coming, but I don't think people saw the other bit coming.
But that point I was like, yeah, I get that.
But I think that's cleverer than just we're really dancing around spoilers here. But I think that bit is better than the other.
I'll give it another watch.
Yeah, it's good. And Max Richter's score debuts at least for me in that film, as well as Arrival, and then later The Last of Us Episode 3. But it's really, really good. Really, really good. And the great Michelle Williams is in there doing her classic, like slightly jaded, distant woman from afar who's tortured and crazy.
Okay, thank you for shouting because I will give that out.
One of the great Mark Ruffalo performances in there as well.
I'm going to go first with the movie called First Reformed, which came out in 2018. Look, we've mentioned Ethan Hawke on the show because we love the Before trilogy, right? But Ethan Hawke is just sort of in stuff at the moment, but like it's rare you kind of get a lead heavy Ethan Hawke movie. So he's in this Paul Schrader film 2018 where he plays a pastor of a small rural community in middle America, and one of his congregation is played by Amanda Seyfried, and she comes to him and she says, could you speak to my husband? He's just come out of jail and he's really, really conflicted about the state of the world. And if anyone knows Paul Schrader movies, they're very moody, very heavy, sort of like a weight of the world, kind of like quite Catholic infused movies. And Ethan Hawke goes and speaks to this man who's incredibly troubled. He's basically an eco-terrorist, and he's profoundly disturbed about the state of the world. And crucially, his wife, who's a member of Ethan Hawke's congregation, is called Mary, and she is pregnant. So there's all sort of religious symbolism there. Anyway, the husband ends up committing suicide, and the weight of the world and the toxic feelings he has about it is almost passed on to Ethan Hawke then. And he plays this just incredibly tightly wound priest who's also butting heads with the very sort of commercialized state of the church in America. He keeps having to visit this huge like arena cathedral that he has to deal with in a different state, and it's very conflicted. But great Ethan Hawke performance, really great score, and really troubling. And like it was one of those years when like Ethan Hawke almost got a nomination and he didn't. But it's a really interesting movie. And if people don't know Paul Schrader, he wrote Taxi Driver and Raging Bull, and like he was a big heavyweight. But yeah, First Reformed.
Next one I want to give a shout out, which I mentioned many times on the show, is Steve McQueen's Shame from 2011. It's one of my favorite films because it has that ability to just stick to you and never let go. 2 years later, he went on to direct 12 Years a Slave, which would very comfortably won the Best Picture and very comfortably sit in a sort of best films of 2020s. But I want to give a shout out to Shame, and actually watching Baby Reindeer recently made me weirdly think of Shame quite a lot in terms of how it discusses addiction and shamefulness around sexuality. They're very different tones, and there's no sort of like internal monologue, guiding you through shame. But this film stars Michael Fassbender when he was really starting to be known as like a real top actor. He'd done Hunger before with Steve McQueen. They sort of clearly had a great working relationship. He plays this nomadic character named Michael who lives in New York City, who is an addict, and his addict comes out in a sexual addiction. And he has this very sort of compulsive behavior that he hides from other people, and crashing it. And he's sort of like austere and hard, and his face is angular and stern and frowning. And his sister comes back into his life, played by Carey Mulligan, who's brilliant in this, and basically ends up just sort of disrupting his life and everything within it. And the film is really, really powerful and good. The ending scene of Shame, if you've seen it, is one of my favorite scenes ever in film. It just completely captures your imagination. It's a wonderful note where like I really don't know what the next scene is, but my brain is filling in all the details. It's brilliant, it's moody, it's sad, amazing performances in it. I really, really recommend it as a film that you might not have caught yet. And it's brilliant.
I think also a lot of people might be initially put off because it's a hard-looking film, and they're like
it's a little bit difficult. It's not one you want to watch with your parents. It's great for like a sort of a solo watch by yourself. You can catch it in cinemas. I don't think it really shows, but it's really, really good.
It had a wonderful teaser poster, which was just crumpled bed
Yeah.
sheets with the word shame just written over it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I remember watching that and thinking, this Michael Fassbender guy is a powerhouse.
He is good.
Yeah.
And you know,
he's been cast as Magneto. Oh, fun.
Actually, you know, I won't delve into it too much, but with Michael Fassbender, you know, obviously Steve Jobs came out that 2015 Danny Boyle film, very good.
Rewatched it recently.
Same year.
Sorkin just firing at his typewriter. Brilliant.
Amazing. But
the Jeff Daniels and Michael Fassbender fight scene that layers between the different decades and cuts back, so they're like arguing in 3 different periods
in the corridor
time.
with all the chairs. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So good.
Excellent.
So
and
good.
Daniel Pemberton's score, really good.
Yeah.
I just want to say, on Fassbender, Macbeth is a really overlooked film. From Orange Paint, Orange Hue, really scary with Marion
Like the
Cotillard. Marion
black
Cotillard
eye.
is Lady Macbeth.
Yeah,
Brilliant
casting.
Really, really good.
Yeah.
Not enough people see that. I want to mention a film that I hadn't mentioned at all until we reviewed Civil War. And when we reviewed Civil War, I mentioned this Colombian film called Monos that came out in 2019. And I mentioned it in the Civil War review because I said that Monos is about a kind of fictional, hypothetical war, but it's very relative to what's been happening in Colombia over the past few decades. And it has, to start with, a fantastic score, as ever, by Mika Levy. And this sort of thumping sort of bass and animalistic growls. It's about a group of child soldiers. You meet them first on this hilltop, surrounded by beautiful, swirling, mists. And the thing is about Colombia, because it's got these kind of hilltops, like magical realism is very much like a part of the culture. And they are kind of isolated child soldiers who can maintain their innocence. They've got one job, which is to look after a cow. That's it, right? And they're sort of playing around. They have guns, but there's still an air of like they're maintaining their innocence. But there's this uncomfortableness that at night you can see the airstrikes far away, a bit like Civil War again. Anyway, the cow does not get looked after properly, and something bad happens to the cow, which triggers the senior officers to come down and take the child soldiers down from their post on the mountain into the jungle. And a little bit of Lord of the Flies takes place, and you have these sort of divergent things where some of the child soldiers start to break, and some of them want to do good, and then some of them are getting very evil. It's one of the leads is played by Moises Arias, who was just in Fallout. Really good, really underseen movie. I saw it at Picture House Central, which has a really great sound system. It's one of the first ones I see there, and it's got this kind of whistling sound. Really, I think you'd really like it. It's everything I kind of wanted Civil War to be. Is like it is a war movie about ideas. They also crucially have a captive American scientist who they're using to just like speak propaganda, and the war is unnamed. Really, really good. Really good stuff. I think it's on Netflix, but like that came out in 2019 towards the end. Not a lot of people talked about it. Really great Colombian film.
I want to give a shout out to a film which actually came up recently from 2018, which I think should be acknowledged a bit more for how successful it is at portraying a period of time, and that's one of the better biopics of that era, which is Vice. The biopic technically is like all about Dick Cheney, and I think there's a really interesting rationalization of that period of time, the impact that 9/11 have, and the way in which they talk about the slow morphing of a monster and how that person becomes what they are. It is not this world where people are on the monsters that we know are on the news. The people who are the terrorists are who we think they are. Actually, they are dressed in a very certain way. They literally lurk in the shadows of the Oval Office. Christian Bale is brilliant in it. It's a really unnerving, sinister assessment of that period leading into 9/11 and post, and understanding the entire world as it is today, and you put a magnifying glass on a singular person who is involved, and I found it actually very bone-chilling.
I also think that people gave this sort of knee-jerk reaction because it got very mixed reviews.
Yeah.
And people sort of were quite irritated by Adam McKay moving from comedy into drama, and almost they kind of accused him of like liberal bias. My thing with Vice, yes, it's kind of biased in that respect, but I really enjoy how angry the film is.
Yeah.
Delivered in a kind of satirical, tongue-in-cheek tone.
It's definitely there,
But Adam McKay is clearly angry in the same way that The Big Short has a lot of anger in it about the establishment getting away with something. And I get that in Vice. It's like, look at this ridiculous, but in a way, formidable character.
Or ordinary person who, through certain circumstances, ended up in this most insane, unelected position, who goes on to do what he does. I just do recommend it. And when I've recommended it to people who've seen it, they've always come back to me.
He's elected as VP, right? He's on the ticket.
True. Yeah, but sort of like
He's pulling more strings than
he
the
should
average
do
VP
as
would
vice
do.
president. But when I've recommended it to people, they've come back to me and be like, "Oh, I thought it was brilliant."
Yeah.
They're really glad they watched it. So if you haven't checked out Vice, or maybe it's due a rewatch, go and check out Vice.
A film I love, and I have touched upon it before, but again, it's like if you're talking about movies from the 2010s, this one really stood out for me, and I think people should go see what they can. Columbus came out in 2017 in America, didn't come out in the UK till 2018. A lovely, gentle, thoughtful, introspective movie that when you watch it at the end, you'll go, yeah. It's like a really soulful thing. So it stars John Cho of Harold and Kumar. John Cho is an actor as well I really rate, actually, particularly after this. Haley Lou Richardson from The White Lotus, people might remember from the second season as Portia. And it's directed by a director called Kogonada, who until then had made video essays about movies, and this was his first debut film. It's set in Columbus, I want to say Indiana, it might be Columbus, Ohio. I think it's Indiana, which just happens to be full of lots of modernist architectural masterpieces. And this was at a time when I was working in architecture and loved films. It was a perfect coalition for me. But it's about this kind of very platonic love affair between a girl, Haley Lou Richardson's character, who is trapped looking after her mother, who is ill. Stuck in her hometown, hasn't moved on. She bumps into people who've gone off to college, and she's sort of like, "No, I'm just here working at the library." Meanwhile, John Cho, his father is a renowned architectural professor who has a heart attack at the beginning of the film, and he has to fly back from Korea and is stuck for the time being in Columbus, waiting for his father to get better. So the two of them are kind of in this stasis point, and they end up sort of talking to each other and going around Columbus and looking at the buildings together. John Cho's never been able to appreciate architecture, but Haley Lou Richardson, who's really passionate about it, wants to share it. And it's very much about like needing to move on, needing to stay put. But the whole thing is just toned very beautifully. Shots are left to linger. Atmosphere is left to build. It's very intimate. It's very calming, and it's really charming. It's a really charming film, and I think that if you want kind of an interesting watch that isn't too heavy, I mean, there's a whole scene in it where Haley Lou Richardson's character makes her mum some soup, and the mum was like, "This is an interesting flavor. What is it?" She's like, "Yeah, it's subtle. It takes time to appreciate." I'm like, "Yeah, that's the film we're talking about here." Columbus, I love it. I don't know where you can see it, but do check it out. It's a really nice, stylish piece of work.
Because so many of our listeners will likely have Whiplash at the top of their list, I want to once again divert people's attention to First Man.
Yes.
Starring Ryan Gosling, which is quite interesting to look at that Ryan Gosling performance, to see the performances he's doing now, because he's having a bit of a canonaissance.
Canonaissance?
Ken McConaissance.
Oh, I see. But, yes, thank you.
First Man, Damien Chazelle film. We said this a million times. We think it's just not really criminally underseen and underexplored. It's the story of Neil Armstrong leading up to the moon landing, the decision to go, the implications of that, who this person is that is able to take on that role, his whole engagement with his family. It's really actually quite a critical portrayal of Neil Armstrong. But this film really delivers in terms of making you think. It delivers on the spectacle of, hey, we're going to film going to the moon. Yeah. And I've only seen it once, but I'd really like to watch it again.
Same.
I think it's one of Ryan Gosling's best performances.
Yeah, I agree, totally.
And I just think it's a bit underseen, a bit slept on. Damien Chazelle is obviously such a talent, doing so many different things. But we sort of put it at his number 2 after Whiplash. It's really, really good.
It's his first non-jazz film.
It really is.
And it's
jazz
about loss and grief.
Yeah,
and what
that represents to go to the voyage beyond.
And what's great about Gosling's performance is that he is doing it very small. Yeah. Neil Armstrong in this movie is incredibly buttoned down and under expressive.
Have you seen them?
If you've seen it, you know. And Claire Foy, in a kind of, it's kind of a little bit of a thankless role because she's very sidelined. That's kind of the whole point. She's this sidelined housewife, but what she does with the material.
Claire Foy is a titan.
And this sort of shaky cam, shot on film by the looks of it, grainy film, but also like a fly on the wall, and you're in the classroom. And, you know, when it really, the terror and the risks and the tragedies that happened up to the moon landing to make it successful is mad.
They do a couple of first-person view stuff, like through the helmet as you're walking onto the moon. When you see that footage of the moon, which obviously is fake, but you see that footage, as in not the moon landing is fake. I mean, they didn't go to the moon. You are like, the quietness of space is really breathtaking. I heard this really interesting thing, by the way. You know how when they were preparing for the moon landings, they rehearsed the filming of the moon landing and they hired Stanley Kubrick.
That's a myth.
To do this.
They didn't actually hire him.
But well, this is the thing. Apparently, he was paid in cinema lenses to do filming. The rehearsal of the filming.
No, I know. It's all an urban myth. I've heard the Kubrick story so many times.
Have you heard that about Tom Cruise talking about it, about the cinema lenses that Stanley Kubrick was paid?
No, Stanley Kubrick did get some lenses from NASA to shoot some of his stuff, but it's not because he shot a rehearsal of the moon landing. That's Stanley Kubrick having NASA lenses is true. Stanley Kubrick working on the moon landing is urban myth. I've heard it in so many different iterations. I just want to stop it there before we spread the theory.
They didn't go anyway.
Yeah.
All right, we'll leave it.
The last one I just want to mention of my own personal favourites. Again, it's a film I've mentioned here and there over the years, but it's this movie Private Life, starring Paul Giamatti and Catherine Hahn on Netflix. You can see it there. Beautiful story about a middle-aged couple trying to adopt a child. It's set in New York. It's just like, I had that beautiful quality of a film that I threw on, and I did not expect it to be as funny and as deep and as moving as it is. There is really heartbreaking moments and incredibly funny moments. You know, Paul Giamatti, Catherine Hahn, two actors who are very, very good and very good at also doing comedy and tragedy at the same time. I loved it. Really, really surprised me. And it was also criminally underseen. Please go and see Private Life.
I want to give a shout out to Her, which I'm desperate to rewatch. It's a film that came out pre-AirPods, pre-AI. I think Siri was knocking about, but not in the same way that it is today. And just like Alexa and everything. That obviously, that whole space of voice assistants talking back to us has completely now in its own element. I'd love to see that film again and how relevant it is. Scarlett Johansson is suing OpenAI because I think they approached her to use her voice for something for obvious reasons.
I think it's more the voice ended up sounding basically a lot like.
Well, I think they'd actually asked her if she wanted to do it,
really?
and then she said no, but they used her voice anyway.
Did you know why her character is called Sam in the movie?
No,
it's because it was originally Samantha Morton, the actress doing it, but then it wasn't. I think it didn't have the right sound. So they ended up going with Scarlett Johansson. But I'd like to see her again. I've only seen it once. It's very stylish. I would like to see it for the design. High-waisted trousers, which are back in now.
One of the great Joaquin Phoenix performances. That camera lives 6 centimeters from his face the entire film.
Soft, dewy glow, and also the kind of American meets Asian design of everything. The cities are slightly Asian
pastel colors, blocks, no logos, technological but sort of clean,
slightly retro as well, and sort of like warm 70s glow of some.
It's interesting to look at. It's really interesting to look at. This trendy little sort of
and
like moustache.
Also, that was made by Spike Jonze. I don't think Spike Jonze has made a movie since then.
God, what film?
Spike. Put your finger out. Let's just run through some of the wider suggestions from people. I mean, obviously, actually, straight away I want to say Little Women, I loved.
Yeah.
And do you know what the interesting thing is about Little Women? It came out in the last week of 2019. So it just slips into the last decade, which is a shame. I adore that film from Greta Gerwig in the same way I love Lady Bird, but Little Women, I think, is a film that is really going to stand the test of time.
We can also talk about the Tree of Life phenomenon that for a really long time, if you went on any list, where it was like IMDb or just a lot of them, you'd see... Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life, like the number one film or like number two for like on loads of lists. And it's a film I've seen and I think is good. But I don't regard it as the best film of all time.
I'd like to see it in IMAX. Yes. I'd really like to see that Emmanuel Lubetsky cinematography.
Wide lens really puts you there.
I've got it on Criterion, and I need to listen to the bonus stuff. There's a bit where apparently Fincher and Nolan talk about why they love the film, and I'm saying that out loud. I'm like, why have I not sat and watched that?
It's so interesting.
It's that's really well. And actually, in 2011, there was those two films. There were two films I mentioned in the same breath. It was The Tree of Life and Lars von Trier's Melancholia. Have you ever seen that with Kirsten Dunst?
No.
Really, really interesting. Basically about the Earth ending.
We were talking about
really good.
We were talking about Catch Me If You Can the other week,
and
it was like apparently at one point Fincher was going to direct Catch Me If You Can. If you watch Catch Me If You Can, it's so Spielbergian and soft and playful, and it's a sweet film. Yeah. But I think a David Fincher version would be cool, but so different.
So dark. Yeah.
To Catch Me If You Can. Anyway, sorry, it just popped into my head.
It's fine. But Melancholia was another good one. A film that we I don't think we've ever talked about, but did get a lot of love, is About Time, the Richard Curtis film. Now, I do have a soft spot for About Time. I think it has...
A lot of people love it.
A lot of people love it. I loved it at the time I went to see it at the cinema, because I'm a sucker for time travel movies.
You just close your eyes. Just sort of keep living. Go back in time.
He's not Prince Philip.
He's just sort of close your eyes. You do the Bill Nighy.
The Bill Nighy hands. Yeah. Yes, About Time has many things that Richard Curtis films often have, which is poor characterization, occasionally weak dialogue. But the thing is, it's high concept. I love a high concept film. And
really
that
grounded.
film it lands. You don't quite, that film could have ended in so many different ways. It could have fallen apart, but the way Curtis lands that movie towards the end really works. And it's all about the emotional connection and the kind of universality of the way that film ends. It's the same way people talk about Click. Not that I've seen Click, but in the same way people go, actually.
Surprisingly sad.
In the same way About Time is surprisingly sad. And I think it's really lovely. Donald Gleason, great work.
Rachel
McAdams
for that when I'm hungover.
Vanessa Kirby turns up in that.
Margot Robbie.
Margot Robbie, of course. Yeah.
Pre-Margot Robbie.
But I stand by About Time. I think it's really lovely. Yeah. I think it's really charming. I'm going to shout some out, James, as we go through it.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, actually, a huge one. And I think if you and I were to maybe
properly rank it,
one that would be right at the top would be Parasite.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a lot of the Oscar winners for this. You can go by and have like Moonlight as well.
Yes,
we can talk about. But yeah, Parasite. What a film! What an impactful, comes from nowhere, takes that whole Oscars by storm film.
What I love about Parasite is how specific and unique the story is. And it's the same way I was thinking about The Talented Mr. Ripley. And actually, there's DNA between the two because it's a similar class-based kind of idea of someone inveigling themselves into a higher class and kind of adopting the persona of the person they're kind of stealing from. But I loved Parasite. I've still only seen it the one time, and I really want to rewatch it. But I think it's still a formidable piece of work, and absolutely one of my favorite films of the last 10 years.
Just on Moonlight as well.
Yes, Moonlight.
Stunning. We never really, very few times we see black masculinity portrayed as emotionally vulnerable in cinema. Yeah. And I think it's shocking to think that there are only films like Moonlight and a handful of others that do it that well and make an impact that they did. Gorgeous film. That whole last scene in the diner, I think, is just phenomenal. I've never listened so hard to what people are saying in a film. When I saw that, I think it's really good.
Manchester by the Sea, The Wolf of Wall Street, Drive, The Grand Budapest Hotel, 12 Years a Slave,
Call Me by Your Name,
Paddington 2, Black Swan, Phantom Thread. I mean, Paul Thomas Anderson. I've not seen The Master. I didn't really like Inherent Vice, but Phantom Thread nails it. Carol, Good Time, Uncut Gems.
Oh, yeah. It Follows.
Yeah, It Follows.
Swiss Army Man, I think, is great. If you liked Everything Everywhere All at Once, go check out their other film. Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise. Yeah, surprisingly solid.
Really good the science fiction thing. And I mentioned Looper in the same breath. I really love that as kind of mid-budget science fiction. Really, I am still in love with the style of that movie, which is the leather jackets, but with a tie and slick back hair, which is kind of like from the 50s. And they take drugs like IV drops. Yeah. No, not IV drops, the
drops in the eye.
Syringe, the homeopathic drops in the
Central
eye.
Oils.
Which is great.
Florida Project, really good.
Oh, yeah.
We need to talk about Kevin, surprisingly really good. What's the face? Tilda Swinton and Ezra Miller, really good in that.
Social Network.
And
I mean, that's 2010, delivers Hello, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. We talked about that with Challenges recently. Hello, what a fantastic
a film you and
duo.
I quote a lot.
It's a great movie. It's one of our favourite. This is also the thing about this decade. What makes it hard is that a lot of our favourite films of all time are in the last decade.
Part of my attention. You have the minimum amount.
Terrific. Performance, script, execution, and just a formidable piece of work.
Asshole, because I'm coming for all of it.
We mentioned Steve Jobs. That wouldn't have existed without
the Social Network film.
Totally. A Social Network is like is the big tree of life where these things fall from. The Black Breeze, the Steve Jobs.
Can Aaron Sorkin do another one? No, not another film. I just like another film. I want more Aaron Sorkin. Really? Is it really basic to be like I'm a big Sorkin fan?
I'd like Sorkin to do another film with someone else directing.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
Like, as much as I like Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah.
And also, so a lot of people pulled out Toy Story 3 from 2010. Yeah. Let's not forget that trilogy ended fantastically in 2010. Brilliant movie. Well,
unfortunately, they made one more.
Yeah.
Are they doing a 5? I wouldn't be surprised.
I think they are. Yeah. I've said this, but look, Toy Story 4 is fine and it's watchable and it's lovely. It's a victory lap, but like, I'm just trying to pretend that it's just the 3 films. Yeah. Many more. There's so many to talk about, and I hope we've kind of given a cross genre thing there.
Django Unchained also great.
Yeah, solid.
Yeah.
I think Django is
too long. I think
Django is solid mid Tarantino for me.
That's still a very good film.
Oh, it's still very good. Yeah. That for me is the film is below
it sits
Django.
in the middle of my Tarantino ranking, which isn't clear to me.
It's the bottom of the best.
My Tarantino ranking, I look at like that, and I'm like, yeah, you're about. You sort of squint. I refuse to sort of do it, but I'm like, you're just there.
Boyhood as well. Yeah. I mean, a great era.
Isle of Dogs. And Isle of Dogs from 2018.
Never saw it.
I think it's really good. I went to a press screening of it when I worked in telly.
With the really hot wasabi.
Hot wasabi, which if you know that film, you know.
Guys, there's probably loads more we could have mentioned, but what a great decade. Nolan's decade, by the seems he seems to have won the decade there.
Oh yeah,
but absolutely, I mean, fantastic.
He could win this decade if he keeps going. Well,
La La
10
Land's
is sort of
on there.
Yeah, La La Land. Yeah.
Anyway, guys, that was the decade that was the 2010s. It takes me back, being 16 to 26 at that time.
Yeah.
And then we finished 2019. I also think 2019 is one of the best years in that decade, actually. I mean, that's a whole other episode discussion,
Yeah.
but
Break down all the
you
years.
kind of get the films that come out right at the end are fantastic.
We know we can talk about that in 2029 when we do the Oscars look back.
I think, well, we're actually very soon halfway through this decade. If we at the end of this year, we'll be halfway through
do
the
a decade in review.
So the decade so far. Anyway, guys, that is the discussion this week. On to the emails.
George, should we go through some of the emails that we get sent into the show every single week? As always, if you want to send in your thoughts, your questions, your concerns,
Your musings, your grumblings, your
you
mumblings.
can do by emailing into hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com. Just like Jacob did. Jacob writes into the show and says, "Hi, James and George. I have to admit that I've been a lurker on this podcast for some time. Always listening, never expecting to write in.
Majority of our audience.
That was until I listened to your most recent episode, brackets 128. Go check it out. Firstly, George, it was lovely to meet you too. Secondly, I didn't think that my exchange with you after pint number 6 of the day, brackets, thanks to some welcome Dutch courage, would result in a shout out on my favourite podcast."
This is Jacob from the Bermondsey Beer Mile, who I mentioned last week.
Jacob from the Bermondsey Beer Mile.
Jacob from the Bermondsey Beer Mile.
Jacob from the Bermondsey
You didn't
Beer Mile.
seem to be 6 pints in, but Jacob, the trick is half pints. If you're going to do the whole mile,
He's a
half
professional.
pints.
It caught me off guard so much that I almost choked on my wrap during lunch at work. Nonetheless, I figured that was a good side to write in. He's just got like...
They're loading him into the back of an ambulance as he's typing this out.
Still got his headphones on. Listening to a review about Synonym of the Planet of the Apes, I found all of your points valid, which was funny because I found the film solid and entertaining. But it made me think why I still enjoyed it so much when I also found your points to be valid, especially regarding the character of May/Nova.
Oh my God,
I totally agree that Freya Allen doesn't fit the character. Go and check out George's review of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes from last week. The point is that... yes?
No, I was just saying, my also problem with Kingdom, calling it Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, is like when you do Rise, you can then go into Dawn of or Land of, and then you can do Fall of, right? But when you do Kingdom, what follows Kingdom?
Empire.
Republic.
Yeah.
Empire's the same as Kingdom, it's just sort of, you know, domain. What's next?
Empire.
What is that? But they're all just
Republic.
domains.
Yeah.
Just land of the... It's already called Planet of the Apes. That is the domain. Anyway, carry on.
Jacob goes on to say, the point is I have a cinematic guilty pleasure, and that pleasure is monster flicks, creature flicks, that kind of thing. I would watch pretty much any shark film there is, likely due to the impact Jaws had on me, and I've rewatched Jaws countless times at this point. I think this bias allows me to forgive a lot of the issues associated with films that are generally not that great. To be clear, everything about Jaws is great. Anyway, my question to you is, do you have any film genre guilty pleasures where if you watch a film of that genre, you're naturally prepared to forgive any criticisms it may have? Keep up the great work, guys. Jacob from Southwest London. Oh.
I mean, I do like time travel. I love time travel.
Yeah, time travel's great.
Kind of always
sci-fi.
Because when it all gets tied up in a bit of a knot, I go, yeah, but it doesn't matter because it's all time travel, isn't it?
Yeah, time travel's fun. And it all naturally, when looked too closely, falls apart.
Exactly.
But that's not the fun.
So you've got to forgive it. You've got to forgive it more.
Yeah. Because all the films that go into time travel, like whether it's Hot Tub Time Machine or Avengers, when they actually discuss how their time travel works, you realise, wait, so Back to the Future is a bunch of bullshit?
Almost like it's an impossible concept.
Yeah.
It's almost like
Do you
it
see
doesn't
Time
exist.
Cop?
I think I'm particularly harsh on horrors, actually, on the opposite. I think I'm always like, you need to do a good third act, otherwise this doesn't work.
So I think I'm becoming, your horror film can actually be quite silly as long as it is scary in moments.
Number one, it has to be scary. It's basic. Comedy must be funny. Horror must be scary.
See my review of Night Swim, which is objectively a bad film, but nowhere near as bad as I gave it credit for because it has a couple of good scares in it. And therefore, I forgive it a bit more.
This next email is from friend of the show, Emily. Emily writes in to say, hey, George and James, just a quick one. I am, along with a lot of pulpettes, kitchenettes, sirens, Emily, please, a big fan of Jake Gyllenhaal, which is why his recent run of straight-to-streaming naff B movies is hard to watch.
Has he had another one, or is it just Roadhouse?
Well, he's done Velvet Buzzsaw, The Covenant. Guy Ritchie's The Covenant.
Yeah. Sorry, he has, hasn't he?
And she says, was Velvet Buzzsaw the start of a chain reaction? Oh, very good chain reaction.
Yeah, very good.
If you were his agent, what would you suggest his strategic next move would be to bring the prestige of his earlier moves and the height of his credibility? Well, he did the Spider-Man movies, didn't he? What's a good credibility?
Do you know what was a good Jake Gyllenhaal film? Source Code with Jeffrey
Early
Wright.
Noughties. Yeah. And Vera Farmiga.
Early Noughties Source Code?
Sorry, early to 2010s, the decade we just talked about. But like Source Code, Nightcrawler, Where's the Jake Gyllenhaal we were promised? Ambulance. He did the ambulance as well. Come on, ambulance.
You
Come
put
on,
him in
Jake.
like a Safdie Brothers film to sort of bring his artistic cred back up.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like just the obvious one, isn't it? Like, they'll safety you right up. Any actor you put in there, you're not coming out the same way.
No.
I think, he needs to be... He's done zany and mad. He's done kooky comedy.
Does he need to like crawl on the frozen earth like in The Revenant and sort of lose the sort of Hollywood glam of cinema?
It seems such an obvious thing, but maybe.
That's also a great director who gets nominated a lot. Like, yeah, if you were just working with this top director, like he's not really a Tarantino actor.
No.
He's not really he could be like a cast in a Nolan thing. Like he's sort of like a Joseph Gordon-Levitt in that way.
Maybe he needs a really shit hot TV series.
Like a great limited series.
A great limited
on HBO
prestige TV series.
that really sort of captures people,
Like either as a lawyer or a cop. I think he's a really good villain. Like, I think Jake Gyllenhaal can be really
Quite
good.
sinister,
like
It's good looking.
if you were to recast The Departed with,
Totally
he
work
would
for
play
that.
Matt Damon's character in a really nice way. In the same way, like I like Matt Damon when he turns up the villainy. He can be really good.
Yeah. He's a good actor.
Jake Gyllenhaal, good actor.
He's really, really good. So is Maggie.
Thanks, Emily.
This next one is from Daniel, who writes in and says, "Hello, James and George. Long-time listener, first-time writer. I was listening to your Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes episode and agree with a lot of what you said. I've recently watched the Matt Reeves and Andy Serkis trilogy again, which completely revitalized my interest in the series. So much so that the point I think it is one of the best action trilogies of all time. The characters are... it's a big claim. The characters are complex and grounded, despite being talking apes. There is so much weight to the direct... There is so... You put weight... like W-A-I-T, but I think you mean weight as in W.
Yeah.
There is so much weight to the decisions and actions each character takes and fantastic allegorical themes that really tie everything together. What I find most impressive, which ties into my questions, is how it maintains these narratives and themes across 3 films. So my question is, what modern trilogy do you feel like should be cited as the benchmark for narrative storytelling across multiple films, e.g. the Before trilogy? Sorry for the waffle, and I hope my question is clear. All the best, Daniel." It's an obvious one, but the Dark Knight trilogy has great themes running. If you watch them all the way through, I realise, oh my God, they're all sort of linked, and it all sort of runs together very, very easily.
Trilogy.
Toy Story,
I think it's always about growing up, and it's always about the...
Yes, very true. Because you don't want a trilogy to sort of unwind and sort of be disparate from each other.
On those apes ones, I agree. I do think they will hold up. And it's nice to see, I've noticed on TikTok, a lot of people giving a lot of love to those trilogies. Some people are only just discovering that trilogy now, the reboot trilogy.
Yeah.
Also, just worth saying, Matt Reeves did direct Dawn and War, but he didn't direct Rise. That was a director called Rupert Wyatt. But still, Matt Reeves, great. And then obviously sprangboarded into the Batman.
Which I hope has a similar trilogy trajectory.
Oh, that would be good. Oh, yeah, trilogy trajectory. This next email is from Ray, who writes in and says, "Jumbo, George and James and George, long-time listener, second-time caller, Ray here. So, Back to Black, which we reviewed many weeks ago, but it's finally out in the States. And I got a chance to check out an early screening ahead of its release. I was put off listening to your reaction episode as it was, I wanted to wait any time. I must admit that I enjoyed it more than I thought, but I was not as moved by it as I wanted to be. Though I couldn't help watching it without the Amy documentary in the back of my mind. I was holding my breath for the moment she recorded her song with Tony Bennett, as I know that meant that her death scene was near. But that never came. By the way, what does Nan mean over there? Is it a term of aunt or grandmother? Oh, Nan is grandmother. Nan is grandmother. Although it was a bit confusing because...
I never call my grandma Nan.
You didn't. No. I've always been a Nan.
Yeah, she's always just
Nans.
grandma.
Nan means grandmother. But also what was confusing is that Leslie Manville was the Nan and Eddie Marsan was the father, but there's probably 10 years between them,
Right,
the age of those two. Eddie Marsan's probably mid-50s, Leslie Manville mid-60s, I'd say.
Yeah, that was strange. This next one's from friend of the show, Puck, writes in, "Hello, James and George. Puck here from the Netherlands with a quick question. My question does not revolve around film or TV, but more so around your guys' podcast journey. I've been listening to your podcast with so much joy since the early 30s eps, so I consider myself a true Pulp Kitchen connoisseur. When I started listening, I was so surprised by the high quality of both the audio and your podcasting skills, especially for such a young podcast. And now, almost 2 years later, you guys are doing all this cool press stuff as well. Yeah. So cool, exclamation mark. The question is if you would provide us with a little background story on how you two got to this point. Were there any doubts to whether or not you wanted to keep going? Or has it been as smooth sailing as it seems on the other side of the earpods? Please don't ever stop making this podcast. Only maybe if you get a TV show instead. Must be watchable in the Netherlands, of course. Keep up the good work. Puck, that's very kind."
I like that. We must make it contractually
available.
in the Netherlands.
Hang on, what about the Netherlands? Take your money, Jeff Bezos. Get out of here. I mean, first of all, very kind. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Park.
I will say on my part, I've been listening to podcasts for such a long time. I think I've listened to podcasts a lot earlier than other people were. I remember downloading podcasts off the iTunes store, then loading them onto my dad's iPod, which I would then listen. You'd have to like manually download a podcast. I remember listening to like the Ricky Gervais ones and loads of like old IGN ones back in the day. So I really just like, without intentionally wanting to do a podcast myself, I was just listening to them for such a long time. And I think I'm obviously copying and mimicking their style in so many things that I do. That's me anyway.
I think in terms of, did we ever have moments of wanting to give? I don't think we've ever had a moment of giving up.
Not give
'cause
up,
we
no.
enjoy it. I mean, we've had challenges.
Really enjoy it.
and
It's hard and
you
it's
have
the
pivots,
workload.
yeah, and it's hard. But we never wanted to give up. I think.
No.
It
It grows every month, which is like the best motivator of progress. No matter how hard it gets, or like early mornings, late nights. What the hell are we going to do for next week's episode?
different time zones.
Yeah, and then me and George always talk about like we've had such distinct phases of this show where we can really clearly bookmark like that was that phase when no one was listening and there was food. And then we had like a thing happen, and then we had a little bit of an audience. We started getting emails in. Then this other phase, and like this year has been like a total other.
In 20 years' time, when there's the big coffee table book produced of 20 years of Pulp Kitchen, we'll have it all written out in a timeline.
The rebrands, we've had 2 rebrands.
2 rebrands, yeah.
Got
Soft rebrands.
Soft,
you know.
but like if you know your Pulp Kitchen history, you'll see that the logo has sort of become a bit more evolved. Like a lot of old logos, it's less skeuomorphic, more flat.
Yeah. It's been a journey, we thank you for joining us on Puck, and we hope that you and everyone else.
And the high quality is always just because we wanted it to be good.
Yeah.
I was already doing video, and I was like, well, I should take that skill, put it into my own project, which should hopefully grow and make me some money.
You can't really grow a podcast without video unless because we're nobodies.
It had to be video. There was no way we could just put out audio clips and hope people found the podcast. I literally think we still would have less than 50 viewers a week if we did that. It would have to be the most word of mouth organic reach versus clips on TikTok and people liking our vibe, which is a lot more work.
But thank you, everyone. Again, thank you. Just not for just Puck, but everyone. Thank you for your support.
Like and subscribe. Tell some people. We need the numbers, please.
Those are the emails we had this week. Thank you very much for sending them in. We have loads more to read through, and we will get to them. But absolutely, keep sending them in to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com. Thank you,
George. As always, let's end with the game. George, as always, Pulp Kitchen ends
with a game.
With a game. We are back with the sound game. You guys loving it on social media. I think you're loving listening to it. We love playing it. We've always loved playing our games, but this one, it's just I don't know, I just get into it.
It's fresh. It's because you get out of something what you put into it.
Yeah.
And the time it takes to prep it, you reap.
And I get little ideas in my week, and I go, oh, the sound with this. I put it in my notes. I'm excited to YouTube the scene, rip the audio, and get it in. Okay, so this game, I'm going to play a sound clip from a movie. Could be any movie. Could be a line of dialogue. Could be a score. Could be a famous sound effect. Could be all 3 at once or not at all. And George has to tell me, within that sound clip, which is only going to be about 3 to 5 seconds long, if that, what film it is. Yeah. George, are you ready for your first sound clip? I think I've got 7 or 8 sound clips for you today.
And they're all like three-ish seconds.
All like, I don't think any of them are longer than 5 seconds. I think one of them is a bit longer because I'm trying to sort of be kind.
Yeah, I'm nervous, but let's do it.
Okay, please play along at home. You have to guess the film from this sound. Ready?
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender.
Easy.
The voice of
Marlon Brando.
The film.
On the Waterfront.
The year?
1952.
Four.
Well, come on. Like,
I know, I just thought.
Great movie. Really good movie.
One of the most famous lines in cinema. And the old school graininess in the sound and music.
The sweet and the sort of, the strings.
Play it one more time for people.
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender.
And he goes
Son
on
of a bum.
He goes on to say, I could have been somebody. Yeah. Lovely. That was sound number 1.
Good movie. And actually there's a lot of tragedy in that movie.
I was shown it in English when we were studying Arthur Miller's
On View from the Bridge?
View from the Bridge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually different though, because On the Waterfront's set in San Francisco and View from the Bridge is set in New York.
I think it was just like themes and shit.
That is the entirety of English GCSE, isn't it?
It's the
themes
vibe.
and shit, yeah.
I was like, watching a video. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Pull the blinds down.
What's the video? Couldn't care. Just, it's a video. It's a video.
Okay.
You ready for your next clip?
Let's do it. That's just noise.
No, it's not noise. I actually surprised you don't have it.
One more time, please.
The second
that's a
half
gun.
of the sound is the clue.
It's a gun. It's a blaster. Something being blasted. Something exploding. Like,
Oh, I'm surprised you don't have it.
Is it
Okay,
like-
so it's a film we've talked about today in a very famous style of score that's been popularized by this film and this composer.
is it? So is it? It's not.
What is the
hands?
Bwam?
Hang on. Don't.
Bwam.
Inception.
Yes.
That's Inception.
Yes, that's Inception. That is the moment when they are falling through the layers. Cillian Murphy's just realised that his father didn't want him to think because of disappointed, and he finds the wind thing inside the safe. Tom Hardy's looking at him, and then he times the detonation. That's the explosion. And then you cut to Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the lift with all of them floating.
Thank you.
And it's a synchronised
Kick.
kick.
Thank
That's
you
the
for
word.
the kick there, because I wouldn't have got that on my own. Thank you.
It's the bwam. So it's a revelation, emotion, crying. Bwam.
I hear laser gun, but anyway, carry on.
There you go. Right, you ready for your third sound? You have to guess the film from this sound.
Let's do it.
Ready?
And knowing this, you have prepared the asparagus with butter. Now, I can imagine in certain circumstances being able to pretend that I like it made this way.
That is the voice of
Daniel Day-Lewis
in a film
Phantom
made
Thread.
by
Phantom Thread by Paul Thomas Anderson. A great movie,
It's
great
such a good
scene.
I was a little bit annoyed that it was coming up in this episode. I was like, oh shit, because I've got Phantom Thread in my game. But such a good scene. It's like, are you an FBI agent that's been sent to annoy me?
And quite possibly ruin my life.
Daniel Day-Lewis is really good in that film, but his voice is so distinctively over English that it sounds foreign.
Yes.
It's this kind of...
I don't understand the... Can we have tea? Is there any tea?
I think the only thing I'm impressed with is the demeanour with which I pretend to enjoy this
It's
meal.
like someone is cupping him. Yeah, you know, and he's sort of, ooh, I'm a little
The
bit
context is that
uncomfortable.
she's cooked asparagus in butter when she should have done it in olive oil, and he's just being
Difficult.
awful.
Yeah, it's a really key scene actually about the power dynamic between them.
The two of them, though, are brilliant in that film.
Three, if you get Leslie Manville, I love it. It's
True.
a three-hander. A great movie.
Great
Talked
movie,
about it
Phantom
today.
Thread.
Go
and
see
check
it.
it out if you haven't already.
I have got all of them with a bit of your help.
Stop it.
Stop it. Enough. Elmer.
Enough, please. Right, you ready for your fourth
Yeah.
sound? You have to guess the movie from this sound. So we have a scream there.
I know exactly what that is.
Yes.
That's The Godfather.
Yes. that is
That's
the
when he
horse.
wakes up with the horse's head in his bed.
Yes,
yeah.
it is,
And I got that
yes.
from the Scream, actually. Not
Yeah.
the other.
Ooh.
The music was like Circus Ride for me.
Yes, it
it
is
is
very, isn't it?
But it's the Scream. I know
It's
the
the
Scream.
true reveal, and then it goes on to have to cut to the exterior, and you hear the scream from
Yeah.
outside. But I'll play that one more time. That is The Godfather. Blood everywhere. One of the most
Yeah.
famous screams.
Yeah, up there with the Wilhelm.
The Wilhelm.
Welcome to the
There's
Scream.
definitely-
Welcome to the Scream Convention of 2024. Hi, I can't wait to see the Wilhelm. Who are you here to see?
I'd love to have seen the guy in the photo booth that day just trying out different ones. What if we went really girly? Like, ah! Ah! That's it. That's iconic. That will
use
be
that forever. Okay.
Surely they'll record more screams. Nope.
We
That
got
will
it.
be our scream. You ready for your next sound?
I am. I'm
Are you
enjoying
playing
them.
at
So
home?
far, I've got all of them.
You have. With a bit of help from the Inception one. Ready?
I know exactly
The
what that
voice
is.
of?
Tom Hanks.
Yes.
In the movie Castaway.
He has a very distinct raspiness to his
Yeah.
voice, Tom Hanks.
He's very hard to
hard.
impersonate. And whenever I've seen people being able to do it online, I really respect them.
Yeah. That's literally the day where he manages to make fire for the first time. He's got the
Yeah.
kindling on the thing. You can hear the fire.
Yeah.
He then throws a log onto the fire and it cuts to him dancing
Yeah.
by the fire. It's a very, very fun scene.
Yes, good moment.
Yeah, good moment. You
Good
ready for your
clips.
next sound?
I am.
Well, tonight I take you places you've never been before. Like where? The 7-Eleven on Broadway? Do you even know my name, Screwboy?
I recognise the man's voice.
Do you?
Yeah.
Do you recognise the woman's voice?
Kind of. One more time.
Gonna play it again?
Well, if not, I'll take you places you've never been before.
Like where? The 7-Eleven on Broadway? Do you even know my name, Screwboy?
So this
I've
is
got it,
where...
I've got it.
Oh, you do?
I think I got it.
Go on.
10 Things I Hate About
Yes,
You.
very well done.
I noticed it because Heath Ledger is doing American accent, but he's also hiding the Australian underneath there a little
And
bit.
Julia Stiles got
Yeah.
quite a distinctive voice.
I
actually.
love Julia Stiles in that movie.
She's really good.
Absolutely love her character. Completely in
I
love
think
with
it's
her.
the scene when he's just been paid by what's-his-face to go on a date with her.
Yes.
And he's just approached her on the football field and they're sort of clashing. Great film.
Great movie.
Heath Ledger looks great in that movie. Yeah. You ready for your next sound?
I am. How many? Sorry, how many you
You've
got left?
got 2 left.
Okay, final 2. Let's go.
2 left.
Let's see if I can
Are
get a
you
clean
ready?
run. I think I know what that is.
Yeah.
But I'm going to ask you to just play it again.
One more time. I hate to always say this, but the clue is in the sound.
I could be wrong, but is that Silence of the Lambs?
No.
Oh, okay, I thought it was near the end with Buffalo Bill.
No.
Okay, but it's breathing. I hear the breathing,
Yes,
and it's
breathing's
point
a
of
big...
POV breathing, and I've seen.
You're really
Yeah.
dancing on the right lines here. You're literally describing the exact visuals of
Point of
the
view.
clip.
Oh,
I'm gonna play it for you again. You're really close.
2001.
Yes, very good. It is the
2001.
scene beyond the void. He's
Yeah.
in the sort of Renaissance bathroom. And
Yeah.
it's at this exact clip, he is scanning
Yeah.
the old bathtub and then his own reflection behind. I can't remember.
He sees himself at stages of his life.
That's
older,
it, yeah,
in
and he's
the, in the
aging in the
uplit,
eyes.
Baroque.
The breathing is very 2001. So the silent
in-
breathing
yeah.
through space, which Interstellar really borrows from when McConaughey goes into the black hole.
Yes.
And everything goes away, but all you hear is,
Yeah. I'm so happy I got that.
yeah,
I feel
you
very
did
proud
really
of
well.
myself.
You're
actually.
really on the right
Yeah.
lines. You used your tools of deduction
Yes.
to get yourself there. Right, are you ready for your last clip of the game?
I am.
You have to guess the film from this sound. Ready?
Like to test the ingenuity of the American businessman.
Two-directional drill. You run it backwards, the numbers go down. Watch your speedometer.
Dialogue heavy.
Danny DeVito.
Yes.
Danny DeVito talking about numbers.
Ooh, I'm 95% sure you've seen this film, but maybe not. I think with the goal is to always use films that we've seen, otherwise it's unfair. Would you like to hear it again?
I would.
It's the longest clip of the game and the most dialogue in it.
Like to test the ingenuity of the American businessman.
Two-directional drill. You run it backwards, the numbers go down. Watch your speedometer.
I have a feeling it's Matilda.
Yeah, it is Matilda. It is.
Right, so here's my deduction on that. So I knew it was Danny DeVito.
Yeah, unmistakably.
And I listened to what he's saying. He's talking about drilling, right? And he's talking about movie but he's talking about deduction. I'm like, oh, okay, I know Danny DeVito's never done a bank heist movie. I know it's also, if you hear the fact that he's talking about drilling and trying to talk about the logic of it and with the tone of it, I'm like, this is clearly a comedy and 90s sort of soundtrack.
It's
in
the
background.
moment where he's a used car salesman and he has this little machine that rewinds the mileage back on cars, and he's showing his son how he's able to buy cars that are really old but sell them for a much higher price.
Yes.
And Matilda's like, "You're a crook, Daddy." And they see the winding down of the
And
end.
I haven't seen Matilda for a very
That's
long
what
time.
I was thinking about, yeah.
I remember the house being scary. Then they're stuck in the house.
Yeah, Miss Trunchbull's house.
Yes.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, and of course he sells Miss Trunchbull a car, which means that she can't chase after him because it breaks down.
With the caveat, of course, that you did give me a slight help with the Inception one. I think we can say
Perfect score.
a perfect
Very
score.
well done.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. There, I
Great sounds.
really enjoyed that. I liked the fact I could deduce them.
We've got different genres, different years. We had On the Waterfront. We had Inception. Was it nice to have Matilda and the Space Odyssey in the same game?
I love it. That was really, really good fun.
That's
I really
such
enjoyed
good
it.
fun.
Did you enjoy that at home?
Were
I
you
hope
getting
so.
them?
Check out
Guys.
for these in clips on social media.
Thank you, as always, for listening to this podcast. It means the world to us that you're here. Don't forget, we post new episodes of this podcast every single Wednesday.
And please do continue to follow us on social media if you don't already, Instagram and TikTok, because that's where we post content that we don't post on the show, like Film Bites, where we interview guests, creators, famous people about their favorite films and stuff, and that's very fun. We also post clips from junkets we do, from events we go to. It's all lots of fun. And we post questions like that informed this episode today. So do keep...
a lot of people are getting irate at Harvey, who we love. He's great. But we asked him what his worst film of 2024 was, and he said Poor Things.
Yeah.
And gave a lot of fair criticisms of the film, which I think is brilliant, but people in the comments are... Whoo!
And he said Dune was an overrated franchise, which also people weren't too happy about. But
Go
you know
check
what?
out the videos. They're good
Spice
fun.
it up.
There's lots of good chat in the comments. Obviously, always speak fairly about the opinions. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much for listening, guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.